Scott, when it comes to economic relief, the government has said, look at this like a natural disaster. We are trying to put the entire economy on hold and get everyone to the other side. But critics say that's not at all what's happening. How do you see it?
Well, Stephanie, I think like a lot of parents, I'm spending a lot of time watching movies, and we're doing something wonderful. We're looking or watching movies with my sons that I watched when I was their age. And there's a wonderful book that was turned into a movie called The Little Prince. And one of the great lines in The Little Prince is, what is essential is invisible to the eye. And I worry that while we call these workers essentials, the one maintaining our food supply, in addition to the people saving lives, those workers who are sustaining life, delivering our food, ensuring we get our groceries, are they really, are they in fact invisible to the eye? And that is, we use the term essential, but if you look at their life, if you look at their security, if you look at their health care, if you look at their dignity outside of a crisis that creates some scrutiny on their actual compensation, are we really treating them as essential, or are they in fact invisible to the eye? And I would argue it's the latter, Stephanie.
Well, then let's walk through this. Take Amazon, take Walmart. Last year, it was Bernie Sanders who went to the Walmart annual meeting arguing that someone from the labor force should have a seat on the board. He didn't get laughed out of the building, but he certainly didn't get any traction. And now here we are. Those are two of the only companies out there whose stock is up this year. And the people who don't benefit are those people in the stores stocking the shelves.
So, look, in an economy, you make a conscious decision around three parties and how much of the fruit they divide. There's shareholders, there's workers, right? And then there are consumers. And in America, we've decided that the consumer is king. We get regulation out of the way and let it such that Amazon gives us incredible deals within 48 hours delivered for free. We then decided that the shareholder class is incredibly important, and a distant third is workers. Over the last 40 years, GDP in this nation has grown 80%. Wages across the lower 50%, which make up the majority of quote-unquote essential workers, is up 40%, meaning they haven't even kept pace with GDP. Meanwhile, the top 0.1% have increased their pay and income 400 to 500%. In Germany, it's mandated that at least 40% of the board has to consist of workers. So effectively, workers have almost no say at the table. And as a result, their compensation just doesn't reflect the term essential. Also, Stephanie, I would argue, and we're going to face some ugly truths here. Every night at 7, we are leaning outside our balconies and we are applauding and honoring our healthcare workers, and we should, because they're saving lives. But we don't go outside our windows and honor the people working in grocery stores or the transit workers, 41 of whom have died in New York State, making sure we have basic infrastructure. And I wonder if it's this continued war on the poor, where because health workers are educated, because we want our kids to be healthcare workers, we think of them in a different light than the people who haven't had as much opportunity as us, haven't been as blessed as us, but quite frankly are just as important. Show me someone at home who is basking in Purell. I'll show you someone who isn't essential. Show me someone who's quote unquote essential outside of healthcare, and I'll show you someone who has no dignity in work, has no healthcare protection, and is forced to go work and put themselves in the way of danger because, quite frankly, they haven't made any money the last 40 years.
Okay, well, Scott, go higher up the economic food chain, and you actually have healthcare workers who are getting getting their pay cut, who are working in hospital systems owned by private equity giants like KKR. You've got healthcare professionals who are suffering. Yet those private equity giants who are supposed to be in a position where they take all sorts of risk, and when you take big risk, you could get lots of upside, but you risk facing great downside. And right now, the government is stepping in and curbing that downside. We're having capitalism on the way up and self-imposed socialism on the way down.
You're absolutely right, Stephanie. It's rugged individualism and capitalism and the Hunger Games on the way up. And then on the way down, it's a lot of call signs by CEOs that we're in this together and sort of a Hallmark channel like socialism. We need to decide if we're capitalists, meaning that if you take incredible risks, there's incredible upside. But if you use 96% of your free cash flow to buy back stock, thereby inflating your compensation and the compensation of the CEO and the directors, and you don't have any cash when a crisis hits, should you be, in fact, be allowed to fail. And what private equity and CEOs are trying to convince us of right now is they're conflating equity destruction with job destruction. And the reality is, and I know this personally, when your company declares Chapter 11, a lot of times there isn't job loss, there's just a wipeout of equity. So all of a sudden, we're in this together. We need to decide if we're capitalists, meaning that equity gets wiped out on the way down, or if we're socialists. But if we're going to be socialists, and let's be honest, socialism, a lot of people say that's a better alternative. 5 of the 7 happiest nations in the world have socialism. And you want your universal pre-K, you want your universal health. But let's not have capitalism on the way up. And then when we hit a crisis, we have the worst type of socialism. We have cronyism, and that is the people with the most representation in Washington, the people with the most economic power, decide all of a sudden that we're in this together. And as soon as the markets start going back up, you're going to hear talks about capitalism and rugged individualism.
Then quickly before we go, why is the government listening to them? We are seeing CEOs of gig economy companies urging the government to provide those Uber and Lyft drivers health care and government support. Yet those companies never paid into the system and made any of those people employees, so they never paid a payroll tax. How could they ask this of the government?
That's the correct question. Amazon has over 100 full-time lobbyists in D.C., not lobbying for higher minimum wage, but lobbying for absence from regulation. And by the way, let's talk about the companies with the most essential workers who pay them anywhere between $12 and $15 an hour. It's Amazon and Walmart. And it's no accident, Stephanie, that today, those stocks hit an all-time high. You're obviously referring to Uber. Uber is now worth more than the entire U.S. auto industry. The U.S. auto industry pays people an average of $27 an hour. Guaranteed their health care benefits. They're still making money. Uber right now has people putting themselves in harm's way. They get clocked out when they don't make any money. Somewhere between a quarter and a third of them make below minimum wage. But we've decided those are the new innovators. We have a decision to make. Do we want to have a ride-hailing economy where people are vulnerable, or do we want to have an old economy like Gestalt or approach where we say there's a dignity in work, and quite frankly, shareholders aren't going to reap as much of the pie, but workers, the middle class, the people who have made this country great, the people bringing us our groceries are going to do better. There's going to be more dignity in work. This requires structural, fundamental change.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.